Alright, I just thought I'd make a quick video talking about what happened with the CS2 market crash. Trying to be as transparent as possible. No fear mongering, no bullshit. Just straight to the facts, straight to the reasoning and logic behind my conclusions, and why I'm going to be doing what I'm doing, and what I think you should do based on your financial situation. Now, I've been seeing a lot of videos where people are using a lot of titles talking about people dying or losing everything, and I think that's bullshit. I know it's all news, I know it's all for attention grabbing, but we really need to, grapple in and realize that we shouldn't be using that for clickbait. I think that's just not good. We should not bring positive light to people killing themselves. And I'll likely get this video restricted in some form or another for saying stuff like that, killing people and all that. But point being that people's tragedies and those families that are suffering should not be used as a form of attention grabbing. I wanted to say that first and foremost, and I'm very disappointed in the CS community for doing that. There are a few creators who have strayed from doing that, but it's just really shameful in my opinion. So if you haven't already been clued in, which I'm sure you have, basically Valve made an update where people can now trade 5 red guns of a collection or multiple collections and get a knife from one of those collections. Now, naturally this will decrease the value of knives and shift the value over to reds. That makes perfect sense. Just as you have any limited collection, the value of a tier of weapon is typically attributed to being about a tenth of the value of the next tier. The prices eventually balance out. We see that with almost every limited collection there is right now. And people panicked. Primarily Chinese investors have panicked and started selling essentially everything they can to try and get out of the CS markets. Which is why we've seen such a disproportionate crash to the actual change present. Let's do some quick math. We got a wonderful Twitter post released from CS Float talking about what actually happens in terms of how many new knives and gloves can be introduced to the market. So basically, if every single skin were to be, used in a contract and made into a knife, every single one traded up, then the amount of knives and gloves would double at most, right? Now, that's completely unrealistic. We know that. Not every single skin ever, given there's play skins, and eventually it'll become unprofitable as prices continue to increase. Tons of reasons that won't happen. But in the absolute worst case scenario, the supply would only double, meaning that in theory, given basic economic, principles, and assuming that demand doesn't shift, then prices would halve as a result of the supply doubling. Now, that obviously is not what's happening. If we go to certain websites like Buff, for instance, this bayonet Doppler, Phase 2, factory new, was going for roughly $1,000, like give or take. $250 you had a few sell for, and right now they're sitting at almost $300. That's a 70 to 80% decrease in price. Why? Why does that make sense? Well, it's fear, right? People are scared, especially in the Chinese market, and they are selling everything because they want to get out. We see this in every market, just to normalize this a bit. We see it in the US stock market, we see it in the crypto markets, we see it everywhere. People see price drop, people hit a certain fear limit, a certain limit where they're not comfortable holding a decreasing asset, and then they sell. And then more people hit their fear limit, and it's a repeating cycle, and it's very dangerous for really the price of anything. No, everyone's looking at this graph, you see this graph everywhere. What does this even mean? Well, it is the combined value of every item that is listed or in people's inventories that we know about. And frankly, that's all arbitrary. These are pixels. They can be controlled by a single entity and changed by a single entity, as we've seen. They have no value apart from the demand attributed to them. So, first of all, we need to realize that it's all arbitrary. This is just, we're essentially betting on whether or not more people are going to want skins, therefore increasing the price. That is all this is. So we need to really simplify that and understand what the CS market is. There is no intrinsic value. There is a risk factor that everything could go to zero. As we've seen today, and these previous days, nothing is guaranteed in a virtual video game skin market, and a lot of people really need to get that into their head. But that being said, what's going to happen? Well, this is an overreaction, assuming that people do, realize that. This is an overreaction, though. From basic economic principles, what we're seeing is just a fear response. And what's likely to happen is that people will eventually, there will be a bottom where people are like, okay, this is such a good deal, I'm going to buy these. And at a certain point, people will be like, okay, I can't sell it for this little. And, it's going to balance out, as do most markets, as do most collections. And what this really should be is just a shift of value from golds to reds. I mean, very simply put. And at least in the long run, that's how it should work. But yeah, I think within the next month or so, the bottom's going to be hit. People are going to start to calm down. They're going to reassess things. They're going to think logically. That's the most important piece. They're going to start using their heads and thinking logically about how much stuff should be worth. And I think that people will start buying back in. They'll realize, hey, these prices are really low, or they're fair, and people will start buying in, assuming that's a good deal. And we'll continue to see an upward trend. Now, that being said, I think it'll take a very long time to recover to any real degree, but I believe firmly that it will, in fact, recover. Now, what should you do? That's an interesting question, because it depends on your financial situation and if you're interested in investing CS2 skins. So, if you're currently in the market and you had golds as a serious investment or a large percentage of your CS2 inventory, you're stupid. Now, I don't want to be mean, but that is objectively the truth. A real CS2 investor who is interested solely in the purpose of making profit off of the game would not have a large percentage of golds in their inventory. And that's simply because the price of gold and the people who are available to buy it, the available demand, is already fairly limited outside of the point of just owning it to watch it increase in value. So most people who even want to buy those just want to buy those for the sake of watching them increase in value. They're not reasonable trade skins, or play skins, at least the higher end ones, because most people can't afford to spend that much money on cosmetics. Now, for lower tier golds, that's partially understandable. If CS market goes up, your value goes up, whatever. But for those who are hoarding tons of high-end skins, you kind of deserve this. China's been artificially inflating prices just because of a new source of demand. No real value shift has happened. There are just more people who want knives and gloves, so prices go up. What I believe we're seeing now is really just a correction from all that. Now, it was forced by Valve, that being said, but it was going to happen. Maybe not to this degree, maybe not to this severity, but it was going to happen at some point when people realized that the price is only present because people want to buy it with the purpose of seeing the price go up. So, if you are in the financial situation where you have money to risk, where you have money that you're capable of seeing completely disappear, I would recommend looking into buying golds at anywhere from a 60 to 80% discount from original price. I say this because I think this is about as low as they'll go. I cannot be sure of anything. I'm not omniscient. But I believe this is about as far as they will reasonably dip. That being said, I think you should buy, maybe if you're sitting on investable income that you're okay with losing, maybe about 50% should be to golds of really any tier, preferably mid-tier golds that are actively used as play skins, stuff like bayonet Dopplers or stiletto Dopplers or, Talon knives, things that people commonly buy and use as a skin just because they like it. That's the key there, knowing that the demand is present because people like that skin. And then the other 50%, rare cases, cheap rare cases. They should not have dropped as much as they did. And I say that because with this, there is no real change to the value of cases. If you think about it, putting fear aside, putting away people instant selling cases in order to get money to buy reds off the Steam market, putting all of that aside, the value isn't gone, it's shifted. There is no real value loss here in terms of raw available supply, or in terms of amount of total value in the case. It is just shifted from golds to reds. We need to realize that. So cases like the danger zone dropping like 33, 35% is completely unprecedented, and it's simply people either selling to buy reds or knives, or people fear selling. That's all there is to it. The actual realistic value of those cases should not change. So I would recommend putting the other 50% or so into those kinds of rare cases. typically below $2 is where I would say you should be looking at stuff like Prisma, stuff like Danger Zone, stuff like Prisma 2s. And if you are not at a place where if you're looking at this as a serious financial investment, which I really don't think you should, CS2 is a game. Everything can change. None of this is solid. There is no real value. But if you are going to take that path, buy rare cases, stickers, and agents. Those things should not have decreased. They have no reason to decrease according to the market. And I think people will begin to realize that, or they will just naturally increase. So do take all of this with a grain of salt. This is simply my opinion. I do not know everything. I could very well turn around in the next few weeks and be completely wrong. But based on logical evaluation of value change, demand change, supply change, there's no reason for this kind of reaction. And even in the situation that China does completely leave the market and never comes back, prices will still, in theory, go up if CS continues to be a decent game that people enjoy playing, and there's people interested in the CS skin scene, as it did previously, before China was able to join the market fully. So, that being said, I'm doing a similar thing. I have a decent bit of disposable income, so I am putting a good chunk of it into buying cheap golds right now. Typically buy orders on CS Float or middleman with buff, because buff prices are just unbeatable, really, if you can find a way to get them. My CS Float account has some money floating in it right now, nothing crazy, sitting on some buy orders or stuff. But I mean, look at this. Why are we, our Vice gloves are being sold for absurd discounts. I mean, and things that even aren't affected, like Dragon Lores? How have Dragon Lores been affected at all? Again, it's a lot of fear that's present, and I believe firmly that the market will rebound slowly over time. But for anyone looking to invest, please take this and understand this. I am not a financial advisor. Everything could go to zero, and your money is not safe here. Nothing is guaranteed. So yeah, that's about it. I just want to make a quick video, talking about really what I think is truly going on, how you should react, how to view everything, and hopefully bring some shame to people using the tragedies of others to promote their videos. So yeah, hope you guys take this well and do well on your CS investing journeys.